anything else that might come up. Excellent. All right, man. Welcome back to another glorious episode of My Business World Live. I'm here with my esteemed colleague, Brandon Allen.
What's up, everyone?
And I am, of course, Billy Bush. I'd like to say the one and the only, but that's not true. There's a much more famous Billy Bush. I'm late to that party. So, all right, man.
Yeah.
Well, we've got a couple of things we want to talk about today. Part of the game here is each week. We're doing this weekly, if you're not aware, and 2 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on Fridays. We'll be discussing business news, things, updates, things of that nature, as well as specific topics that we're hearing, challenges, struggles that clients are facing in the coaching world and business practices primarily. And then get a couple of recommendations and tidbits and things of that nature as well. So let's kick this off. First of all, how's your week gone?
It's been real up and down, man. Like some wins and some losses. So it's been okay.
I hear you. It's that's as it goes. Right now it's a bit crazy. So yeah, we're definitely feeling it in some fronts, and then some new opportunities showing themselves as well, which is always cool. And are you still not fighting with your kids too much, or are you figuring out that homeschool thing?
That's been okay. Yeah, I mean the kids seem to be doing okay, although they were disappointed to hear that they're not going back to school this school year.
Yeah.
And so it turns out they do like school.
Yeah, a bit more than they thought anyway, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't know if that's an indictment of my teaching or if they really just want to hang out with their friends.
Yeah, one of the two there, huh? Yeah, that's it. I'm not sure who's more disappointed in that announcement, frankly. My kids or my wife, let's be honest on that one. But and myself included, that's for sure. I am far from a good teacher on that front. All right, dude. Well, first let's jump into the news a little bit. Some things that are going on. Obviously right now, things like government benefits and loan programs and all of the stuff that's happened with the CARES Act is kind of coming to fruition, or at least we're starting to see it live and in the wild finally. What give me some of your take on some of the things that are happening in that realm.
Oh yeah, here we go, man. It's rant time. So look, as you guys have seen probably here yesterday, PPP funding at the SBA level is tapped out, right? So until they either add more money to that program, there's no new money that will be generated at the federal level for lending. However, there is potentially still money with individual lenders, right? So lenders were given, a certain allotment, a certain amount. And so there's still those opportunities for lenders to do that. So as you heard that news, a lot of people got disappointed, they got angry, they got scared, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's no more money available. There could still be money, available for for individual lenders, depending on who your lender is, right? Now, your lender may be tapped out as well, but just something to consider. And then as far as like the EIDL loans, that process is just super slow.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know too many people who've gotten anything really moving with that. And all I know is the SBA is completely inundated with requests and loan applications and everything else. So I have zero clue what the timeframes on that are. Although I have heard some people are getting some of their funding done and some of their funding in place, so that's good for them. But there's a couple things that I've seen here recently that I wanted to talk about, just with regards to like PPP. One of the things I saw, some friends on social media who posted an article that, said that big businesses were the only businesses that got PPP loan money. And that's just not true. Billy and I work in the small business space. We're small business owners. Not only was I approved for a PPP loan, I know a lot of other people who are approved. Maybe they haven't funded
Mhm.
yet, but they've been approved and they will get access to cash. Although I do know some small business owners who've been funded as
Yep.
well. And so now look, have I seen the breakdown of the stats to know predominantly who's gotten PPP money and who hasn't? I have no idea. But the reality is I know other people haven't either. And so
Mhm.
I think as we look at the political climate that we're in right now, like it's kind of unfortunate that really what's taken center stage in this situation has been
Yep.
politics more than anything else. And my personal opinion of this is there's nothing that's going to ruin our country faster than
Yeah.
politics, because everyone wants to make funding for small businesses political. Everyone wants to make response to viruses political and everything else, right? And so it's really easy to get into this kind of political pissing match to say, see, Donald Trump hates
Mhm.
us, so he's giving all the money to big companies, and as if he has control over that situation, right? And look, I'll say it right here, even though people won't like it. I mean, I'm not a Donald Trump supporter. I'm not a Donald Trump fan, but I'm also not blaming him for my financial lot in life from my small business standpoint either.
Yeah.
So there's that piece. And then, I just had some friends that, God bless you guys. Look, you want to post memes from the other 98 and Occupy Democrat. Like, I totally get that. But, talking about how billionaires want to get back to work, and we're trying to say, well, billionaires are losing money, and so they're trying to force people back to work. And that's another thing that I would be really alarmed if I talked to all the billionaires in the world, if they even
Yeah.
cared that people were going back to work or not. I actually don't think they give a shit. I actually think the people who want to get back to work are
Yep.
workers. And why do they want to get back to work? Because food, clothing, and shelter is a big
Yep.
deal. And so these people want to get back to work for that reason. And so you're starting to feel people push up against this whole quarantine because workers want to get back to work. People are scared, right? People are watching their local businesses
Yep.
struggle. They're watching their, those employees of those businesses go without jobs. We've seen so many unemployment claims over the last month. It's been
Yeah.
ridiculous. I mean, the most and in any point in time in history. And people are scared about that. They're trying to figure out, well, if I survive, what am I surviving into?
Yep.
What's next for me? And it's really interesting. The people who I feel like who have the loudest voice in this whole thing are people who don't feel the consequences of the decisions that have been
Yep.
made, right? And so I'm always worried and nervous to receive advice or comfort or solutions from people who don't have to live with the consequences of their decisions. So politicians, by and large, do not have to live with the consequences of their
Yep.
decisions. They still have a job. They're still paying
Yep.
themselves, right? I know Donald Trump graciously donates his check every quarter or whatever, right? But for the most part, politicians are not really feeling uh, the impact of the
Yep.
decisions that they make. And I know a lot of people who work for government entities in different places where, hey, it's cool, man. If you work in academia, you can say, hey, this is an outrage and people don't be stupid and everything else. But that's fine. You still have a job.
Yep.
You're still getting a paycheck, and you're sitting at home not doing anything and getting paid to do that. That's awesome for you, but that's not so convenient for the person who owns a dental practice or a person who owns a
Yep.
restaurant or any other industries that have been impacted by that. So I don't really believe the narrative that billionaires are trying to make us go back to work because they're losing money or they're worried about money. I actually think they're independently wealthy
Yeah.
anyway. At least they should
Yep.
be, and they're not worried about whether or not we go back to work or not. They're all they do. They stand to
Yep.
capitalize on the longer that we're out of the situation. And I just think from a political standpoint, there's really, that's the thing we have to look at. And honestly, I feel like we're to blame in a lot of things with politicians. We get so angry about corporatism
Yeah.
in politics, but you know what? Most people hate corporatism, right? I don't care if you're a Republican or a
Yeah.
Democrat. There's nothing that sits well with people in a situation where we know that politicians are bought by corporations. And I don't care what the
Yeah.
politician
Absolutely.
is, this happens on both sides of the aisle. And so we have people who are really worried about that, but no one likes corporatism. But we allow this stuff to happen because we continue to reelect these
Yep.
politicians who have been in power for 30, 40 years, who clearly have never done anything significant or worthwhile for our benefit, yet we continue to elect them because of partisan politics.
Absolutely. Well, that's what's so interesting is you see the blame game happening when it happens on both sides of the aisle so predominantly, or, preeminently. It's like even like at the CARES Act itself, like we were talking about before the show, just the pork barrel garbage spending that was pinned onto that thing in order to get some people to pass it, and half of the companies line itemed in it specifically. It's just like it's just pure games, right? So it's a terrible, and it happens absolutely on all fronts. And those that are more disconnected, if they've been in there for too long, right? It's like they become more and more distanced from their decisions. That they forget more and more. It actually goes right back to that to my book recommendation from last week, which was the Nassim Taleb's Inserto, the Skin in the Game, which is one of the books in there, and that's specifically what it's about. Is basically if you are not impacted by the decisions you're making, if you're not on the receiving end of that, right? You don't have skin in the game. It's not going to affect you. It completely skews the risk profile. It completely changes, like how things really go down, and you get much crazier, riskier behavior. Anytime you're not attached to that. In fact, I saw a quote today that was capitalism without. It was in 5 Bullet Friday. The email from what's his name, Tim Ferriss. So the Tim Ferriss email, 5 Bullet Friday, he had a quote in there that said, capitalism without bankruptcy is like Catholicism. Oh, hold on. Did I lose you?
I'm here.
There you
I'm
are.
back.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you are. All right. So I was just saying that quote I saw from Tim Ferriss's email today, which was capitalism without bankruptcy is like Catholicism without hell. Which it's like
there you go.
If you have no risk of going to hell, things change a little bit and people act a little bit differently. But anyway, I digress. Getting off the point a little bit there. But that's the reality. There isn't evidence that, like you said, we don't have all the evidence that there isn't this favoritism going on, but we also don't have it that there is. I mean, and that's the problem. Is these articles are coming out and people are saying these things without any backing. It's shot in the dark because them and their friends didn't get paid or whatever it is, right? And that's the struggle. So it's like at the end of the day, we do what we can, put in the applications that you can. There are still banks accepting applications as well, in spite of that, because as you said, they still have funds, right? So it's like they haven't distributed all their money yet. They're still accepting applications, even though the SBA may have on their end. And I actually also got notice, and anyone who has an SBA loan for a building, and I don't know if it just applies to buildings, but the SBA is like not only deferring payments in a lot of those cases, but actually covering the payments. So if you have those loans, I mean, it's definitely a Merry Christmas on that front also. And if you haven't seen that, check it out. It sounds like it's pretty automatic though, so it's not much that has to be applied, which makes it pretty easy. So anyway, excellent. Any other tips or notes on that front?
Nope, I've beat that to death.
Right. Kill that thing. All right, so next, let's chat about. Let me just pull up these notes here real quick. So today, past the news, we'll move on from the news. Some of the things that we're seeing with clients, some of the struggles, the hurdles that are happening there. Like, what's a big thing that people could start focusing on, or you feel like would be valuable for business owners right now? You there? I keep losing you. You're frozen. Hello. Come back to me, Brandon. Can you hear me? Hopefully you'll come back here soon. Got a nice frozen look on your face. Oh, there you are. I think you're coming back. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I'm coming back here.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what the heck is going on.
Got some funky internet connection things going on.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I think one of the things that I'm seeing, and this is so important, is, for a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs, what we don't want is to be put in a box, right? We don't want to be overly structured. We don't want to have to be overly directed. But it's interesting to see what happens to our basically our well-being and our sense of drive when we have everything that's on our schedule kind of stripped away from us, and we're left kind of trying to figure out, like, what do we do
Yeah.
next. And one thing I've noticed is it's important to have routines. If you usually get up in the morning and work out, or if you do a power hour, right, one of the things that I like to do is focus on mind, body, and spirit, right? I'm reading, I'm praying, meditating, I'm doing exercise, those types of things to start my day before I roll into like a typical workday. And I'm trying to keep regular office hours as much as I possibly can during this time to create some semblance of structure. I've noticed a lot of business owners who are starting to uh, kind of fade out of that structure, and it's starting to have some consequences on their mental and emotional well-being. And so we don't it's so important to create some sort of structure, some sort of normalcy in your day-to-day life. Look, if you just start laying in bed all day, that stuff just kind of self-perpetuates itself, and it becomes just a vicious cycle of laying in the bed day in and day out
Yeah.
and really not getting the things done that you want to get done. And so if you have routines that helped you to keep a good frame of mind, and that really help you to be productive and feel healthy and emotionally well, make sure you go back to some of those disciplines, because the more we get away from those, the more we start to feel like our identity is being stripped away from us, and that can be really tough to deal with, especially in a time like this. So if you have routines, stick to the routines. That's the only other thing that I really see is prevalent right now with business owners that we're working with, is just not really feeling normal or having that sense of normalcy, which is totally understandable. But how do we continue to develop that sense of normalcy?
Yeah, I think I think that's a really good point. It's very easy to, especially when something like this happens to where the routine is basically attacked, that one of two things I think are going to happen. You're either going to just forget it entirely and stay in bed or whatever. You're going to slow way down, and that does have all sorts of impacts that people don't realize. It's not like you just have fun relaxing, right? As you mentioned, it has way more drastic impact. The other thing I feel like is people try to maintain the exact same normalcy that they had, which is
Yeah.
also going to be frustrated because you can't. I mean, like, because whether you can't open your doors like normal, or you've got kids that you've got to now figure out how to homeschool, or whatever other reason it is. So I think part of it is being very intentional too, right? And kind of create
Yeah.
your new temporary norm, if you will. And so what is your new schedule going to be like? So you have some intention around that. Otherwise you sit around, which I've caught myself doing, right? Saying I should be doing this or I should be doing that, and I'm not, and two things, whether I should or shouldn't is one thing, and I'm not getting things done that I maybe should. But also it weighs on you whenever you feel that, like, I should be doing something that I'm not. You're obviously you're gonna feel crappy about it, right? You're like,
Yep.
it's gonna weigh on you. So you want to know, no, I don't need to be doing that right now. I'm gonna do that later today, or I'm gonna, these are the new hours. But creating some form of structure for the new norm is, I think, is required for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Awesome. Any other tips around that, as far as like how best to go about that, or anything else that way?
Well, look, I mean, if you used to have a morning routine, or if you want to start a morning routine, now's a really good time for that. And honestly, like, movement.
Yeah.
I know every state's a little bit different right now, but here in Utah, we can still go
Yep.
outside, right? We can go for a run. You can go to the park. Obviously, certain like playground equipment, things like that, are closed off. You can't use it. But, I've taken my kids out to shoot baskets at
Hmm.
the park. We've gone for runs, things like that. I mean, I try to avoid you know trailheads and things like
Yeah.
that are going to be overly crowded on weekends, um but there's still things that you can do outside. So get outside if you can. Get out in the sun
Yep.
if you have sun. I know my friends in Colorado got 8 inches of snow yesterday. But just get out if you can, and start your morning off right. I just think if you start the morning off the right way, the rest of the day just kind of unfolds in a more organic, natural way. Then when we roll out of bed at like 10, we usually get up at
Yeah.
6, and then you just kind of feel out of
Yep.
sorts. You're like, God, what do I even do now? I don't even
Yeah.
know. So just start your day, off on the right track.
I like it. I like it. And I like that you've added as well there. This is also an opportunity if you haven't been doing something like that. I mean, anytime something like this is shaken up, it's usually an opportunity to readjust a little bit easier because you're kind of forced out of your old habits. So you have vacuums there that are going to be filled by something. So it'll either be filled by a new habit that's good or the lazy habit that's sleep until 10 and do very little. I'm not gonna lie. I've done a little bit of both. We'll just put it that way. There's definitely a few things that I slipped on. I've been slipping on pretty bad. And then this week in particular has been really a ramp up to like new like renewal there. So that's been a good thing in a lot of ways. Cool. Excellent. All right, man. Well, no, I think that's really good. That'll be the, kind of the big takeaway today is just reanalyze your protocols, your structure, how you're running your day, your ideal week, mapping that out, and it'll be new, it'll be different, and call it create it separately. It'll be your temporary one or whatever, your quarantine ideal, and just kind of laying out how you're gonna manage your time to be most effective. And really, I mean, as you said, at the end of the day, it comes down to the mental health from it. So it's really a necessity for that more than it is for the survival of your business. So that'll be good. Let's close her out with a couple of things though, as we did last week. Any book recommendations for the week? What's your book? You don't have to do 3. You can do 1. That's okay.
Okay. So right now I'm reading Spiral Dynamics. So basically, Spiral Dynamics is another way to think of how do we create order. And so there's other ways that and theories that people have utilized to create order, right? There's systems theory, right? And so that's a theory that exists on creating order in the world. There's also chaos theory, right? So, chaos theory is like when you look at weather patterns and they seem very random, but when you start to really analyze it, there's a lot of order to the chaos and the randomness. But chaos theory is a really appropriate thing right now because a lot of things are being disrupted.
Absolutely.
And so Spiral Dynamics is another kind of offshoot of that. I think it's less popular. I could be wrong about that. I think I hear about it less. It might be popular in other circles, not aware of it, but Spiral Dynamics is all about just how systems kind of build on each other based on new levels of understanding, right? Whether that be survival instincts, so think of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, to how we kind of evolve over time, and this is something that really helps us in leadership, in understanding values, in really motivating change. There's a lot of different values for that. So Spiral Dynamics kind of gets into the thought process of where does Spiral Dynamics come from? How did it get started? What is it? How do you use it? And so I'm not all the way through the book yet, but it's very academic. So it's not like a Chip and Dan Heath book where, you got a lot of fun stories and you just kind of fly right through it. It's a little more dense in terms of, the content that they have in there, but really interesting if you're a business owner or a leader, just to examine kind of your systems and the way you do things. I think there's some tidbits that you would pick up in that if that's something that you're kind of looking at, which right now, is a perfect time to look at that because everyone's kind of had their business disrupted.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, we've got these vacuums. It's an opportunity to fill them with better systems and processes or think differently about it. What is it geared towards? Is it geared towards business owners? Like, what's the audience, intended audience?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, leaders.
Okay. So it's leadership angle there. Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Who's the author? Whoever.
No idea.
Whoever it is.
Oh, one of them's Dan Cohen.
Okay.
And the other one, I think it's Cohen and Beck. Let me see here. I'll look it up right now because I think Cohen and Beck, but I don't remember their first names. I shouldn't have said that so flippantly because I actually did remember their names. Anyway, it's Cohen and Beck.
All right.
And actually, it's a book that's hard to find. Actually, I actually bought a copy of the book from a bookstore in the UK.
Really?
Believe it or not. So
what brought you to that book?
To
was it recommended, or what brought you to that one?
I was on some rabbit trail and it was like a random book mentioned from a random article I read, and I thought that sounded really interesting. And it has been. I mean, I think anything that can help make sense of systems that seem very complicated, I think is always really valuable. So That's what interested me. Yeah. So Christopher Cowan and Don Edward Beck are the
All
authors.
right, excellent, excellent. Spiral Dynamics, great. So,
Yeah.
my book recommendation today is also one that I am not finished yet, but I'm really enjoying, and it is Indistractable. Indistractable by I don't know how you pronounce his name. Nir Eyal. It's Nir his first name, and last name is Eyal. So he's written other books as well. Nir Eyal. Man, I don't know. I'm butchering his name terribly, but
Yeah. Hopefully he doesn't see this because he's gonna be
that's
pissed.
right. That's right. Sorry, man. I'm really sorry. I love the book, but it's very good. I mean, subtitle: How to Control Your Attention and Choose Your Life, and that's what it is. It's about understanding the what affects our attention and when we get distracted a lot, and then also the psychologies that are at play with like games. You know how like social media try to create almost addiction out of it, right? Like you want to keep going and playing with it. And some of the things that are happening on that side, on the technical side, but as well, he brings a lot of research and things in from the most obvious of distractions and addictions, which is chemical addictions, right? So drugs and things like this, and it's super interesting because there are techniques that really help people overcome these chemical addictions, and you realize like if they have a physical addiction to the substance and they're able to overcome it, how these similar tactics could be utilized to take control of our other addictions, like a technology addiction or whatever it might be, right? Our psychological addictions, where there isn't actually a physical addiction at play. So really interesting stuff, though, and it does come down to really how we can control our time and attention, and put it to better use, of course, and to things to follow our value tree a bit better, right? So things that we really want to work on. If you want to spend more time with your family, you're actually doing that instead of flipping on your phone or doing whatever. So different approaches there, understanding the psychology behind it, as well as lots of tips and techniques and things like this that to optimize that psychology situation. So Indistractable, great
Nice.
book. That's my recommendation for the day. He also wrote Hooked, if you're familiar with that book. And what else is that the one that? Yeah, How to Build Habit-Forming Products. Yeah, that was the other book that he wrote. So in the same kind of vein, he wrote that earlier. It's a very good one as well. And in fact, so I guess I end up with two, but they're with the same author, so I'm allowed to do that, I guess. That one's interesting as well when you talk about in creating better experiences for your products, so they become the addiction, I guess. So
Yeah,
the good one, because our products are good to be addicted to.
Right. That's right.
All right, man. Well, anything else you want to say and leave us with for today?
No, man. No, just keep doing what you can. Worry about what you can control. Don't worry about what you can't. I know that's easier said than done, and just some stuff to be present to for the next week and the weekend. And look, it's Friday. Enjoy your weekend. Have some fun.
Absolutely.
And